One of the first ones, I tend to wait until the last part of my talk to talk about the mini grant, and I usually run out of time. So I'm going to start with a little talk on the mini grant. Alzheimer's Resource Alaska partners with the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority to provide a mini grant up to $2,500 for anything not covered by another funding source. For this particular mini grant, a person does have to have a diagnosis of some form of dementia. But it is, again, for anything not covered by another funding source, it's only a one-page application, and you are welcome to pick one up. I can distribute them if you are interested. So I'll just divide them in half. If you could take one if you're interested. If not, just pass it to the table behind you. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to talk about normal aging, or is it something else? We're also going to talk about honoring connection as we age. A lot of people are concerned nowadays with, gosh, is what am I experiencing? Is this something normal? Is this something, and I know normal is kind of one of those strange words, but we're going to talk about when does forgetting become a disease, how we know if it's something more significant. I want to start with this quote. I love this quote because it reminds me of how challenging it can be when we start talking about the brain. This quote says, "If the brain were so simple we could understand it, we would be so simple that we couldn't understand it," basically. And I know this is kind of funny, it's kind of a play on words, but for me, it's a reminder that the brain is very complicated, and diseases of the brain are very complicated. So as we go through here, and if you start to think, gosh, this is a lot of information, you're right. It is a lot of information to think through. But again, I come back to this quote. The brain is complicated. So we're going to start with a talk about everyday forgetfulness versus something more significant. On the left-hand column are everyday forgetfulnesses. On the right-hand column is something more significant. And we're going to talk through these and give some examples. I also have another handout that I'm going to give you. And again, you can just take one if you're interested and then hand it back to the table behind you. Thank you so much. This is this side. So this sheet talks about, we're going to start with the side that has the little squares that looks like this side. And it says at the top, what is normal aging? Okay? Everyday forgetfulness. So let me start with a question. By show of hands, how many of you have forgotten anything ever? Okay, good, you're all awake. That is actually a good sign. Something more significant is being unable to recall instances of memory loss. So if you are talking with a friend, if you are talking with your medical provider or your family, and you say, boy, I'm feeling frustrated, I've been forgetting things more, that's actually a good sign. Something more significant is, I don't forget anything. It's my family that's worried about me. I'm not having troubles with my memory. It's my coworkers who are worried about me. Then we talk about, of course, just goes along with that, we individually are more concerned about our own memory lapses as compared to close family members being concerned about our memory lapses. So again, normal aging is, boy, I'm starting to become forgetful. I wonder if this is something to take note of. Finally, recent memories of important events is intact as compared to a notable decline in memories of recent events. Several years ago, one of my elders broke her leg, and I went to the hospital to see her. She was in the hospital with a broken leg, but she had advanced Alzheimer's. And I said, "I'm so sorry you broke your leg." And she said, "I didn't break my leg. What are you talking about?" I quickly changed the subject and moved on and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I must be thinking about someone else." But that was really significant to me that her short-term memory was such that she could not remember that she had just broken her leg. So as we go along a little bit further, occasional difficulty in finding the right words as compared to frequent pauses and substitutions. We call this tip of the tongue syndrome, right? I hope all of you can appreciate that. It's like we all think, "Oh, what is that word? What is that word? It's right on the tip of my tongue." That's normal aging. Something more significant is having frequent pauses and substitutions. I need the thing to, write, okay, maybe a pen they're talking about. We can find our way around familiar territory as compared to getting lost in familiar territory. If any of you saw the movie called Still Alice, she was in her cabin home and she couldn't remember where the bathroom was. Now that was familiar territory. This was her cabin, and she had an accident because she couldn't find the bathroom. Finally, able to operate common appliances as compared to difficulty with the ability to engage in tasks. As we go through some of these examples, think about how often it occurs and how much stress or anxiety it causes. So if you're on this sheet now with me, you all should have a copy of this. With normal aging, we may forget some or parts of an experience. Often we can remember later. We can use notes as reminders effectively. We know how to take care of ourselves, and we sometimes forget a name. Something more significant is forgetting the whole experience, rarely remembering later. So I may say, "Oh, how was that restaurant that you went to? What did you order?" Normal aging is, "Gosh, what did I order? Boy, we were sitting near the window. Oh, I had the chicken. That's right, I had the chicken." That's normal aging. Something more significant is, "I was never in that restaurant." They forget the whole experience. Also, again, notes. We use notes as reminders. If you have a calendar, that's normal aging. Something more significant is just having a wall of Post-it notes that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. And then knowing how to care for self. I, as an adult, get to choose my personal hygiene habits. Something more significant is if someone is forgetting the passage of time. So if someone says to me, "Debbie, you've got some food on your shirt. You might want to change that shirt." Okay, that's normal aging. Something more significant is, "No, I just put this shirt on. And who are you? You're coming into my home, you're saying these mean things." That's a little bit more significant. So if you flip over to the second side, it gives some warning signs to be aware of. Now again, with these warning signs, think about how often they happen and how much stress or anxiety they cause. So I'm going to start with number 7, frequently misplacing things. Then we'll go back to the top just for an example. I am always losing my glasses. Can anybody relate to this? I am always losing my glasses. The resources and the wherewithal to be able to get new glasses. That does not cause me stress or anxiety. Now, if I ever walk into work someday and I can't find my glasses and I start swearing or I start crying, then it's not funny anymore, right? That's much more significant. So again, that's an example of watching for patterns. How much stress or anxiety does it cause? So it starts with number 1 and number 2 that go along together. Recent memory loss that affects daily living skills or difficulty performing familiar tasks. All of us have bad days. All of us struggle sometimes to remember to brush our teeth before we go to bed if we're exhausted. But again, if it starts to become a habit, if it starts to become a pattern, it may be something to take note of. Problems with language, we touched on that on the previous slide. Disorientation of time or place. This is not forgetting what day of the week it is. I'm sorry to tell all of us, that is normal aging. If we forget the day of the week, that could be normal aging. What it talks about with disorientation of time or place is waking up a woman who's in her late 80s who says, I've got to go pick the kids up from the school bus, even though her kids have obviously been out of the home for many years. That's something more significant. When we talk about poor or decreased judgment, number 5, we're talking about safety issues. The 4 biggest safety issues are driving, cooking, money, and medications. Driving, cooking, money, and medications. As you can envision, those are huge areas where safety is critical. When it comes to paying bills, where is the money coming from? Where is the money going? How do I know if I'm out of money? How do I know if this is a scam or if this is a real bill? With medications, they may start to put them all together into a pile and not take them when they're supposed to. And of course, driving and cooking, huge safety areas. Now, if we forget one time, the popcorn burns one time in the microwave, doesn't necessarily mean it's Alzheimer's or dementia. It just means start taking note of that. And again, watch for patterns. How much stress or anxiety does it cause? Abstract thinking is anything that requires 2 or more steps. So again, food preparation, grocery shopping, dressing, relationships are abstract thinking. A person with dementia may start to call their granddaughter their daughter. Again, those abstract relationships, abstract thinking, frequently misplacing things, I touched on that. And 8, 9, and 10 go together. Sudden changes in mood or behavior, dramatic changes in personality, or significant loss of initiative. Now, I know in the previous section, the doctor referenced this could be depression. If someone has changes in their mood or behavior, dramatic changes in personality, significant loss of initiative, a number of years ago, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. They did a depression screening as compared to a dementia screening because of my age. But the symptoms were similar, right? And we'll touch base on that again in a few minutes. But depression is very treatable. So when we talk about some of these signs of are they normal aging or something more significant, again, remember how much anxiety does it cause and how many times is it happening. The next sheet I have is an assessment about when does forgetting become a disease. I know a lot of people have questions about this. A lot of people are concerned with, is this a disease or is this normal aging? This has 19 questions, and the invitation is to score yourself or score your loved one, and then the directives at the bottom say if you answered yes to 10 or more questions, or yes to 15 or more questions, see your doctor. Just because you answered yes to 10 or more does not mean you have a disease of the brain. It means follow up with your doctor, that something else may be going on. We're going to see in a minute here, lots of different things may cause symptoms of dementia. So that leads us into a question as far as, well then, what is dementia? And we're going to go through some information here. Dementia is an umbrella term describing a variety of diseases and conditions that develop when nerve cells in the brain die or no longer function normally. The death or malfunction of these nerve cells, which are called neurons, causes changes in memory, thinking, and behavior. So I look at that and I say, okay, so that's a lot of words, but I still am unsure, so what is dementia? So let's dig a little bit deeper into this. When we talk about dementia, the word dementia, first of all, is not a disease. It's a collection of symptoms. Dementia is not part of normal aging, and dementia is significant. So again, dementia is not a disease. It's a collection of symptoms. It is not part of normal aging, and it is significant. So what if we were all to go to a doctor or a nurse practitioner today and blow off the conference? We might report certain symptoms. We might say, gosh, I'm forgetting things, I'm confused, trouble with self-care, I'm getting lost, I don't know where my medications are, I think people are stealing from me, I'm feeling lethargic, I don't feel like myself, I'm forgetful, right? The doctor or nurse practitioner may say, okay, that sounds like dementia. Now, hopefully, when you or I or a doctor hears that word or says that word, our brains think, I wonder what could be causing that dementia. I wonder what could be causing changes in my memory. And there could be 100 things, right? Medications, depression, alcohol, nutrition, poor nutrition, thyroid, head injuries, tumor, stroke, heart, infection, delirium, dehydration, mild cognitive impairment, or dementia. What we're going to learn is there are what we call reversible dementias and irreversible dementias. So again, lots of things might contribute to a person having dementia. I think of it like this, and I'm going to give you this word picture. Imagine you have a rash on your skin. What possibly could cause a rash on the skin? 100 things, right, or more. Dog bite, bug bite, eczema, psoriasis, cuts, burns, bruises, chemicals, poisons, toxins, chemical. All kinds of things may cause a rash of the skin, up to and including a disease of the skin called skin cancer. Dementia is like that. When I hear the word dementia, I think, I wonder what could be causing this collection of symptoms. And it's 100 things. It could be depression, thyroid, chemicals, poisons, toxins, reactions to medications, up to and including a disease of the brain called Alzheimer's. So when we think about, I love this quote from a long time ago, the late 25th and early 24th centuries BC. Someone said, "The spirit is forgetful and cannot even remember yesterday." And that to me indicates that people have been having challenges with their memory for many, many years. It's not something new. Dementia is not a disease itself, but a broader set of symptoms that accompanies certain diseases or physical conditions. It is a loss of cognitive abilities in 2 or more areas, severe enough to interfere with daily life. So our cognitive thinking abilities are what help us process and get through life. We talk about memory, we talk about language, we talk about attention, we talk about perception, we talk about judgment, etc., abstract thinking, those things that we highlighted. So again, here's our umbrella. Now we're going to talk about, these are some of the irreversible dementias. Lewy are brain diseases. Alzheimer's, younger or early onset, late onset. We have vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal dementia, or other dementias or delirium. So let's think about, first of all, these reversible dementias. Delirium, depression, drugs. Like I said, for myself personally, I was diagnosed with depression because I was struggling with different confusion, memory, self-care issues, etc. But depression is very treatable, as I mentioned. Alcohol, eye or ear problems, metabolic issues, endocrine issues. Someone might be hypoglycemic or have diabetes. I was teaching a class a number of years ago, and a police officer was in my class. She came up afterward and said they got called out to a call where someone appeared to be having a psychotic break from reality. They appeared to be having a mental health crisis. They were able to convince the person to go into the hospital, and here the person had undiagnosed blood sugar that was off the charts. So they presented as a mental health challenge, which may present as dementia issues. But again, once that diabetes was treated, those symptoms went away. Nutrition, normal pressure hydrocephalus, trauma, tumors, toxins, infections. Something as treatable and as common as a urinary tract infection may cause symptoms of dementia, right? Again, those symptoms of confusion, forgetfulness, getting lost, having trouble with their memory, having trouble with their money or medications. A urinary tract infection, again, very treatable. Once that is treated, those symptoms of dementia may go away, okay? And then arteriosclerosis, and you see dementia down the side there. So that leads then, if there are reversible dementias, then there are irreversible dementias. Irreversible dementias get progressively worse over time, and the acronym is ADRD, Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. The related dementias are Lewy body, Parkinson's, vascular, frontal temporal. And some people may pronounce it frontal temporal. It's actually frontal temporal is the way that it's pronounced. We don't have to make anybody feel bad if they say frontal temporal, but we can model that language that it's actually pronounced frontal temporal. So we're going to go through these very briefly, just so that we know a little bit about each. Of the irreversible dementias, Alzheimer's disease is the most common. More than 50% of people with an irreversible brain disease have Alzheimer's. It's a progressive degenerative disease that attacks certain nerve cells within the brain. It leads to a loss of function or death of those nerve cells. It's characterized by impaired memory, impaired thinking, and impaired behavior. Damage is done well before the symptoms occur. There's no cure. Age and genetics are the primary risk factors. Although I will say, for Alzheimer's, the genetic component, research continues to prove is relatively low. Research suggests that only 5 to 7% of Alzheimer's is genetic. Now, That means that we may see some families that are in that 5 to 7%, where grandma has Alzheimer's, Uncle John has Alzheimer's, cousin Sue has Alzheimer's, your parent has Alzheimer's, a sibling has Alzheimer's, but it's only 5 to 7%. At this point, age is the primary risk factor. Above the age of 85, 1 in 3 are likely to develop Alzheimer's. Between 84 and 65, it's 1 in 10. Under the age of 65, it's 1 in 20. So if a person is age 64 or younger and they develop Alzheimer's, we call that early onset. That's the term that is used, early onset Alzheimer's, under the age of 65. These two brains, you may notice, look different. And I'm going to walk through this a little bit. If we were a smaller gathering, I would say call out what you notice about these brains. But I'm guessing, here's what you're noticing about these brains. These brains are different sizes, they're different colors. One shows some blackening, some shadowing, it almost looks like it's getting smaller, shrinking. The brain on the right and the brain on the left are two brains, and some people will say, well, maybe this isn't a fair comparison. Maybe somebody's brain is just smaller. I will let you know that both of these brains were taken from men in their late 70s. The man on the right, and they had the same size skull, so they measure all these things in autopsies. The man on the right died from a car accident. The man on the left died from Alzheimer's. So you can see the shrinkage, the gaping, it's not the same. Alzheimer's causes a brain literally to die. It shrinks. So this is a good picture of what it's like to have Alzheimer's. And then diagnosis is made through elimination of other conditions, like we talked about. Lewy body is on a spectrum with Parkinson's. They have similar characteristics. So Lewy body and Parkinson's have gait issues, rigidity issues, movement issues. Michael J. Fox is an example. Many of you may remember he was an actor from the 80s. He has so let's think of it like a spectrum. He has Parkinson's way over here, and this is Lewy body way over here. To my knowledge, Michael J. Fox does not have any Lewy body. He has Parkinson's. Other people have Lewy body with no Parkinson's, and then to make it even more complicated, some people have Lewy body and Parkinson's, or Parkinson's with Lewy body. Comes back to the original quote, diseases of the brain are complicated. Then we have frontal temporal dementias, and I'm going to give you a visual. Frontal, temporal. Frontal is the part of our brain in front, our forehead, the part of our brain behind our forehead. It's responsible for helping us be good citizens. This is our executive control center. This is our decision-making center. This is our maturity center. Interestingly enough, this part of think about teenage boys, right? They're all into sex, drugs, rock and roll, and everything in between. It's because their brains are not fully developed. In females, the frontal lobe tends to develop by around 18 to 20. But, again, if our brain isn't fully developed, we may not be good citizens. We're going to be making poor choices. There was a movie many years ago called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. In this movie, Jack Nicholson is not making good choices. He is stealing, he's being violent, he's being disruptive, and they do what they call a frontal lobotomy. That means they took out the part of his brain that was supposed to be causing him to make good choices. Now, as you can imagine, that is not person-centered care, right? We do not do frontal lobotomies anymore. But in the movie, he became compliant. Yes, but he was basically a vegetable. He didn't have any personality. He didn't have any. So sometimes how this is reflected in aging people, and like it says here, frontal temporal dementias are characterized by early behavioral and personality changes and or changes in language and speech. So if someone is normally a tax-paying citizen, they're good neighbors, they're good friends, all of a sudden they're shoplifting and taking off their clothes in public, they might have frontal dementia. Might have. I'm not a doctor. I'm not diagnosing anyone. It might also be a mental health condition. And then we have temporal, both sides. Our left temporal lobe tends to be our logic side. It tends to be the language side, the math side, the reasoning side. For whatever reason, frontal temporal dementias seem to attack the left side of the brain first. So people lose their ability to do math, they lose their ability to balance a checkbook, they might lose language skills. And again, these are things that a doctor has to diagnose, look at, and consider. The right side of the brain tends to be the rhythm side, the creative side, the side that engages in art and music. This side of the brain for whatever reason, are retained on the right side of the brain, which again explains why some people with an irreversible dementia may start swearing like a sailor because they might have some damage to their right temporal lobe. Now, some people may ask you, are you right-brained or left-brained? That we can understand. Left-brained people tend to like puzzles and math, and I'm not a left-brained person. I don't like puzzles or math. Or they say, are you a right-brained? Are you more artistic and creative? Music, they say, scientists say, is the only thing that will bridge both hemispheres of the brain. Music connects with our scientific logic side, and it connects with our language and rhythm side. This is significant because if we want to connect with someone who is experiencing some kind of dementia, try music. There's different music, obviously, that will ramp us up, get us going, other music that will calm us down. You can use music in times of transition, times when people are experiencing difficulties, or when they're feeling anxious or stressed. One of my coworkers cared for her father many years ago who had Alzheimer's, and they would prompt him and say, "Come on, Dad, you gotta go to the bathroom. It's time for a wash up." And he wouldn't respond. And of course, you can't pull someone, you can't force them to participate. So they came up with this idea. He used to love music. So my coworker, they came up with some songs, and the dad would be sitting there, and they'd say, "Oh, when the saints, come on, Dad, oh, when the saints go marching in," and they'd march down to the bathroom. So it's really interesting how we can be creative with people whose brains are changing. Now, some people may say, well, can we use the words Alzheimer's and dementia interchangeably? That's a good question. All Alzheimer's is dementia, but not all dementia is Alzheimer's. When I hear the word dementia, it is a reminder to me someone's brain is changing. To me, it doesn't matter why their brain is changing, it just matters that their brain is changing. So many people may use the word dementia or Alzheimer's interchangeable thing. Okay. And if you have questions, write them down and save them for the end. Okay, so when we talk about dementia, and again, I use the word dementia broadly because it might be any of the related dementias, Lewy body, Parkinson's, vascular, frontotemporal, or it may be dementia due to a urinary tract infection or depression or thyroid problems, etc. So we want to talk a little bit about aging and brain changes, or aging and dementia. To experience dementia, and I might add to experience aging, is possibly to see the world as a more frightening and confusing place. It's possibly to experience the frustration of knowing what to say, but having the words come out all wrong, right? This is why communication is so challenging, even for the best and healthiest of brains, because communication is challenging. There's been hundreds, if not thousands, of books written about communication, and it might go something like this. What you heard was not what I said, and what I said was not what I meant, and what you meant was not what I said, and blah, blah, blah. It gets very complicated. Now think about someone's brain changing, again, for whatever reason that their brain is changing, and think about communicating to other people and trying to understand what is being communicated to them. It's also to experience a loss of control over life, and possibly to experience feelings of incompetence or lack of confidence. Also, when we talk about aging or dementia, it's to continue to be recognized as a unique individual. All of us want to be seen for who we are. It's to continue to have needs to give and receive love. It is to continue to want to be included in the surrounding world. And it is continue to feel emotional security. How many of you would agree that all of you, no matter where you are on the aging spectrum, these are things that you need or want? To feel valued, to feel appreciated, to give and receive love, to have a sense of purpose. Yeah, thank you. So as we age, I'm going to transition now a little bit and talk about how we can honor connection as we age and what that means and why it's important. If we remember that to experiencing aging might be frustrating, might be frightening, might be a little bit overwhelming, let alone if your brain is changing, just aging is difficult, right? So if we remember this, we can use comfort with touch. We can hold someone's hand. We can touch them on the shoulder. We can comfort with familiar sights, sounds, smells, textures. We can use our voice to soothe or comfort. Again, music. And we can include in conversations or discussions. This is also appropriate for anyone experiencing any disability, right? We all want to feel included. We all want to be honored as we're aging. One of the things that we can do when we talk about dementia is reminiscing. Reminiscing is just a fancy way of saying remembering. So this is a lovely quote. Reminiscence focuses on early memories, which often remain very strong after the ability to remember more recent events deteriorates. The term dementia, as we talked about, refers to a decline in thinking abilities, and memory loss is a universal feature of dementia. Again, whatever is causing that dementia. So we're going to talk about some ways that we can reminisce with our loved ones, with our people, with our elders as they're aging, with ourselves as we're aging. Reminiscence is the recollection of one's life experiences, and there's different opportunities in reminiscing. It's an opportunity to celebrate the uniqueness of an individual and reaffirm the values of their life. It's an opportunity to nurture relationships through others, through a sharing of common experiences. There's a sense of appreciation to enjoy individual differences, to participate socially and have fun, to be in charge, to be an expert in something, to share personal stories. And you may say, well, I love this idea, but how do I do it? Well, I'm glad you asked. I've got a handout for you. This is a tool that I came across. Oh, you'll need more on this side. Here you go. And this is called Who I Am. To our knowledge, this does not have any copyright information, so you can copy this and distribute this as you see fit. One of the things I like to ask people to think about is start with yourself when you think about what's important to you. As these handouts are going around, and there'll be more coming for this side of the room, as these handouts are going around, I want you to think about that there has been an accident, and you have been involved, you personally have been involved in an accident that will cause you to be at some extended care facility or some assisted living for the next 6 weeks. If you can, if you have a little piece of paper or a little scrap note paper or something, just jot down, what would be important to me in someone providing care to me? And everybody is different. As many people as there are in this room are how many examples of what you would need in a caregiver. So for me, I would need someone who has a sense of humor, but also someone who is knowledgeable about what I'm going through. I would need someone who believes that I am in pain, but also believes that I am doing the very best I can. For me, I would need to be by a window. I would need to see something outside. And I would need to have a sense of dignity with personal care. Even though I'm a very out person when I'm presenting, I'm actually very shy. And if someone is doing personal care, I would need some sort of coverage or protection. We may need some more of those, and I'll get in care to you. This Who I Am tool just gives some examples of how you can help communicate what you need. This is also really good to do with your elders. So the first page is just some examples on how to complete the questions, and then you see there's some blank pages, some blank questions here. And it starts with, my name is, I prefer to be called. My name is actually Deborah, but I prefer to be called Debbie. If someone calls me Deborah, I feel like I'm in trouble, right? I feel like, Deborah, what did you do? I don't know, I'm not sure, So I like to be called Debbie, and I am not a coffee drinker. So at some point in the future, if I'm in an assisted living and I'm starting to become agitated or fearful about something, and someone says, oh, come on, Deborah, let's go get a cup of coffee, I'm not going to be a happy camper, right? Because they haven't even taken the time to figure out what I want to be called. So then it just goes through here some questions. People, when they are angry, they cry. So we all respond differently. Then it talks about things that relax me, things that bring me peace and comfort. It talks about music I enjoy, things that are important to me. Give me an opportunity to reminisce about what makes them feel successful, what makes them feel valued and important. And again, I recommend filling one of these out for yourself in case, God forbid, something were to happen and you were to end up in an assisted living facility for 6 weeks. I also recommend filling these out with your elders or your aging parents. Now, a couple caveats, but I only got through one question. It took 20 minutes. And I said, that's okay, that's the purpose. That means for 20 minutes, that person's life made sense. It doesn't matter that they kept going off on a rabbit trail. It doesn't matter that they kept telling you stories. That's the purpose of this, right? The other caveat is if you want historical accuracy, maybe have a family member fill this out. If you want to have a good time with someone who may be experiencing dementia, ask them these questions. So when I used to work in an assisted living, And I would fill one of these out with each of the new residents coming in. The one adult son came in, and he was sitting there with his mother, and I got to the question about, oh, do you have any children? Now, she said, oh, no, I don't have any children. They're a big mess. They get into things and they break things, and her poor son is sitting there like, what is she talking about? So, again, if you want historical accuracy, ask someone in the family to fill it out. But if you want to connect with someone and just hear whatever's on their mind, which may or may not be true, then have fun with that. Another example, there was a man, I was asking him, what did you do when you were in the working world? And he thought about it for a minute, and he said, I was a firefighter. And I said, oh my goodness, that's exciting. His adult daughter was there. She slammed her hand down on the table and she said, Dad, you were not a firefighter. You saw a fire one time on TV. And I said, it's okay. It doesn't matter. If he wanted to be a firefighter, I can go along with him. I can meet him where he is, which is a reminder about communication. If someone living with dementia, and again, I don't know if that is a brain disease, if it's caused by a thyroid problem, dehydration, I just know their brain is changing. Meet them where they are. If they make a direct statement, my answer can be, okay. I don't have to force them to think other thoughts. I don't have to force them to be with me. I can meet them where they are. And I'll give you an example in just a minute. But if somebody asks a direct question, I think it's okay to be honest. So when I was in the assisted living, I worked with a man and his wife had died. And he would say regularly, my wife is coming to get me today. Jan's coming to get me today. And we would say, okay, that's a direct statement, right? My wife is coming. Okay, let's get you cleaned up. Let's get you showered. Let's get you shaved. Let's get you ready to go. In the meantime, we're realizing, what do we know about this man? What do we remember about him? What can we use to maybe comfort him or maybe redirect him? So he would make a direct statement, my wife is coming to get me. So we would say, hey, would you help me with, I want to take some cookies out of the oven, or I want to get a cup of tea or something along those lines. And then he was saying, my wife is coming today. And I thought, what a powerful example of meeting someone where they are. So if they say, today is Saturday and the sky is purple, my answer can be, okay. Right? I don't have to force them. No. Today is Tuesday and the sky is gray. What difference does that make? There have been studies and research that have talked about what they have called reality orientation. Should we try to orient someone to reality who is experiencing brain changes? Time and time again, the research has come back that that is not successful. It frustrates the person who is living with dementia. It frustrates the caregiver, whether they be professional or family. What we do now is what's called person-centered care. That means meet the person where they are. If it's not something that we want to argue and fight about, let it go. If they say today is Saturday and the sky is green, okay. If they say, what day is it? Then you can say it's Tuesday. The same thing about hallucinations. Someone might be very upset. They might see some animal or child in the corner. Get that child. Do you see that child that's getting away? They might become very anxious, right? They may say, do you see that? That's a direct question. I personally believe it's okay to say, I do not see that, but I know it is distressing to you. Can we go to another room? Can we go to a different part of the building or whatever? But if they say, look at those kids, okay, that's a direct statement. I don't have to argue with them. I don't have to fight with them. So some ways that you can reminisce with people. Certainly music, we've talked about that. Smells, sounds, photographs, art, poetry, something called a storyboard or a life collage, a memory box. So we'll go through some of these very quickly, and let's see how we do it on time. So this talks about life stories. I think of life as a good book. The further you get into it, the more it begins to make sense. The telling of life stories is a natural and lifelong process. Daily conversations are frequently peppered with tales of amusing adventures, moments of wonder or heartbreak, or descriptions of lessons learned. So, again, if you only have 10 minutes to spend with your aging parents or your aging elder that you're caring for, these are the questions that you can pull off from Who I Am. Tell me about where you lived. Tell me about a place you went to. Or if you know about them, that's even better. You can prompt them. Tell me about when you went to life, achievements, failures, work, health, sexuality, adventures. All kinds of things can be peppered into our life stories. Why do we tell our life stories? Because they're fun. They encourage conversation. It provides a way to connect. It's creatively and socially, emotionally satisfying. Provides opportunities for self-discovery and creates a legacy for children and grandchildren. You can think about life stories as a tree using branching points. Those events, large or small, that take our life in different directions. You can use something called a life graph, where you talk about highs and lows in a person's life. Or you can do a collage. Ruby did this one. I love collages myself because magazines, calendars are always available to pull pieces of artwork so people can make a collage. When we think about someone who says something like, I want to go home, a lot of times they may not be talking about a physical building. They may be talking about, if they have a faith experience, they may be talking about heaven. So I want to end with our experience here together. Our desire for ourselves and those we love. When you come to die, may it be after a long life. May you be tranquil among those you love. May your going be sheltered and your welcome assured. The truth of the matter, friends, is all of us know that we're aging. We know it intellectually. We don't know what tomorrow is going to hold. We don't know if our loved ones or ourselves will be diagnosed with some sort of dementia, some sort of irreversible illness. My encouragement to all of us is live life while you have it. Live life with as much excitement as you can because we don't know. So Alzheimer's Resource Alaska has Friday, November 14th. Our phone number is listed there at the end. You can call us in early November to schedule a time. Again, we have our mini grant program. We have professional trainings that we can come to your organization and do a talk. We have caregiver groups. We have groups for people that are in early to mid-stage memory loss. Please reach out if we can be of any help. At this time, I think we've got just a few minutes left. And what questions do you have? I know there's someone that's coming around or has a microphone. Thank you, Ricky. You've got one right here in the second row.
My name is Burrell, and I had to go into a facility when I broken my leg in 2022.
That's right. So that is, again, the importance of ahead of time. What would be important for you? Deborah, thank you for sharing your experience with us. I'm sorry that was not a pleasant experience. Hopefully, as we, move forward, we can more advocate for ourselves what we want or need when we are being cared for. So, how about another question? I'm at the table upstairs. If you want to stop by, I'll be here all day. I would love to talk with any of you. Want to thank you so much for your attention and your participation. Do what you can to keep your brain healthy. Live your life, and thank you so much for this invitation. Good to be with all of you.